They don't have the emoji that I would like.
Because this is all just going to go on.
What?
It's recording.
It's recording. Okay. All right, so we're going to jump back in. We're doing really well, but there is still a little bit more work. I think we're up to Article 5.
But I think we got a shot.
We got a shot, yeah,
Let's go.
but it is almost 8, so let's see. All right, Article 5, so Lynn, the thing here is that each council member shall serve on at least one committee, right? Let's jump right in.
The entire bylaw committee felt extremely strong about this, that everyone needs to be a living, breathing, participating part of this council. Can I put a check next to that? Anyone got a problem with having to be on at least one meeting, one committee? I don't care, Lester, just tell me what you want. You're okay with it? Well, there's a bunch of people not here. Can I put a check next to it?
Sure. Just put one committees.
Well, people aren't here to get volunteered.
All right, next page
The
we've
next
got.
page is we deleted the medical advisory committee because Scott said they have their own rules and regulations.
We just did them.
Yeah, well, by statute, they're not part of they're not a committee of ours.
Okay,
So it never should have been in there in the first place.
okay, so can I put a check next to that? All right. Down on the bottom, this entire section, C, D, E, this was all right from the, help me Carol, general municipal law?
Yes.
Yes, so I typed it up word from that. We didn't make any adjustments to it. And this, it outlines what an executive session, the very specific items that executive sessions can be done, et cetera, et cetera. So does anyone?
And am I correct that this is consistent with the language given to us by our attorney in a memorandum this summer when we had some questions about the use of executive sessions?
Yes. Can I put a check next to that? Okay.
Are you referencing only C?
What, honey?
No, I was C or all of it?
All of it. See, please, take a moment to read. It's just, I typed it up word for word from the law.
This is word for word from the public.
Section 105 of the public authority,
General municipal
Public
law.
officers.
public officers.
That's
Yeah.
what it's
Section
called.
105 specifically pertains to usage of executive sessions.
So what we're, again, just so I understand, you're saying that C, D, and E is part of that general statement?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Under Article 7, again, this was kind of a housekeeping thing. We deleted the whole REMAC committee shall do because they're an entity unto themselves. I just kept it in so you could see what it used to say and what we don't want it to say now. Can I put a check next to that? I need a few more head
Sure.
checks. Okay. Well, I don't want no one. Okay, the last one. And if you would please look at the handout, the extra handout that was on the table when you came in. This is per the changes that Tim Hannigan wanted me to put. And it says no IRS Form W-2 employee, and he tried to give as many examples as possible. But specifically left out those of us who are instructors here. Okay? So, because there's a number of CICs here. So we're not prevented from serving as a voting member, but office staff is. Open to questions, comments.
I think that's a check.
It is, could you give that to Dean, please? It is Article 8. Article 8, under conflict of interest. And it was a new paragraph F that we put in. And then was tweaked by the attorney.
I don't see any objections at this point. Any discussion? Are we putting a check there?
Check.
We got a, no, I think we're putting a check. Okay. So, Lynn, I think we've gotten through all the amendments. So, first, Bylaws Committee, you've done an incredible job of helping us to get what may have seemed like an impossible task close to done. I presume that the committee will meet over the next couple of weeks, and there are a couple places where language is going to be clarified. I think that every change that this group has recommended has a consensus around it, and you know what they are, and they'll be reflected in the minutes of the meeting if you need that. And hopefully a document that can come back and be introduced as an actual amendment at the next meeting. And then they'll...
That would be considered the first reading, is that correct?
That would be considered the first reading. And that's then, presumably, since we have consensus, there won't be a lot of, even though everyone here has the right to make amendments to the, to use parliamentary procedure, but since we're so close, if there's no serious flaws found, then we'll vote on it the second time at the April meeting, and the bylaws will take effect thereafter. And I think somehow it has to reflect formally that certain provisions will not kick in until January of 2000, at least that needs to be stated in the motion. Just for example, like the second vice chair, the provisions that involve current membership will not kick in until the 1st of January of the following year or whatever, just so legally speaking that's established. So,
All right.
any other things for the bylaws committee from anybody?
Nicely done.
All right, cool. All right, thanks.
All right.
We're back to it's 8:05, we'll start the meeting.
Okay,
That's not terrible.
It's not terrible.
okay, under discussions, drug shortage activities, Steve?
Okay, everybody has a copy of the letter we sent to the Iroquois Healthcare Alliance on February 9th. Since we sent the letter, we've gotten a call from the Iroquois Healthcare Alliance, which is the trade association that represents all the hospitals in northeastern New York and central New York, inviting us to come up and meet with them. We have a meeting scheduled, I believe it's March 23rd, where their team and our team will sit down together. They're facing the same shortages we are. Hopefully they have some strategies they can share with us about its, I don't have it on, so if anybody, we do have a group that is going, which is the people that are signed on to this letter, as well as Tim. If there's anybody here who is a provider agency that would like to attend, that can talk about their shortage, how it really is affecting them, please let me know. We'd like to have, none of us that are on this letter are directly field providers. So we'd love to have one or two field providers that are experiencing the epi shortage, experiencing the saline shortage, that can come to the meeting, talk a little bit about it with us. So just let me know after the meeting. And we'll see if there's anything that comes out of it. That's my report.
Slide sheets, hover mats, Brian?
I just reached out and got the group together. I think that to understand better the program moving forward, we really need to sit down with the nurses committee, or at least a select group of them, to really look so that they understand how the process will work, the exchange, and maybe I think it benefits the nurses committee, because you'll see then some interest from EMS. And I think the best bet for us right now is we've talked to everybody, with some dialogue back and forth about one-for-one exchange and agencies. I don't wanna get into a whole funding thing. I mean, we can certainly look at it once we start to push this out to some of the smaller agencies, but in talking with Scott, and understanding the pads are relatively inexpensive, so when you're really talking about the pumps, if you decide that you're gonna carry them or not gonna carry them, I think that we need to have a better idea, of who's all in and like agencies, number of ambulances, et cetera, and then, you know, assuming that everybody's on board with a one-for-one exchange, we put it on, we take them to the hospital, we can get one back. Probably most of the hardest part will be the logistical, you know, how do we get it back? Is there gonna be a stock of them, or we're gonna have to go to a nurse or whatever? So really wanna sit down, I think, with a group of us, and that, you know, we get those questions answered, and then we'll come back and be able to touch base. I think there's a good representation of, I don't know that we have anybody from Schenectady on there, if anybody wants to step up. I think we got everybody else a good representation, so, you know, I wanna make sure that we have 100% of contact with each agency so that they understand the whole process here, and it's not just misinterpreted through a memo or something like that. I really wanna, if I have to call everybody in Schenectady or whatever, I'll do it myself. I just wanna make sure that, what?
I'll do it.
Okay, so just wanna make sure that we talk to each agency that, you know, so they understand the process.
So the chairperson needed for the regional activities of bariatrics, is that what you're referring to for chairperson, or no? Separate?
No, the nurses committee was the one that was looking at this. I think that we need to have a better direction of what the hospitals are thinking. I mean, I don't wanna go out and tell everybody, look, let's buy a pad for each ambulance, and then once we do that, we'll be able to exchange them one for one, if that's not really what we're looking at doing. So I think it gives us some dialogue. There's some great interest from the people I've talked to, and even some providers I've chatted with, you know, that being in the hospital or working part-time and taking some larger people to the hospital, you know, it's like, we used one the other day in St. Peter's, and my partner was like, holy cow, I'm thinking, you know, this could be on every patient, so, it was really easy transfer on somebody that was really big, so.
So if I give you the date for the next nurses
Yeah.
committee, would you consider,
Yeah.
if it works for you for that? Okay.
Well, I'll put it out
put
for
that
everybody that
back.
can come, but I think I think the best bet, we'll get somebody there just to kinda get the dialogue going back and forth. As many of the people that are on there that can come, great. I don't know that you need to redo the nurses committee to get it so that more of us can get there. Just let me know when it is, I'll put it out and see how many providers can, and most of them are all, you know, are full-time people that are working during the days anyways, could probably get away and stop in there. Even if you wanna make it, you know, the first part of the meeting, we'll stop by for 30 minutes and then skate, you know. Then we
Do
can
like
bail and,
3 hours, so you come at the beginning of it?
yeah, we'll come in the beginning, talk about it. When we're done, we can just get out of your hair and go back about our business. You guys can go on with your meeting.
Good. And I'll let you know who's hosting, I think it's St. Peter's, right? I think it's St. Peter's, but I'll look at my.
easier to have it here? Would it be easier to have it?
Okay. That's easier for us, or for you guys, I don't know if it's easier in St. Peter's. I don't know
Where
where
was
I'm
it?
from, but
St.
I think
Peter's.
it's St. Peter's. then
Yeah,
obviously.
it doesn't-
Yeah, that's
We
fine.
don't, we don't care, I know.
Okay. I'll let
As
you
long
know.
as they give us a room big enough to hold, you know, a few extra people than what you're used to.
Yeah, okay. I'll let you know.
Yeah, just let me know.
Yeah, okay. The next thing is the regional activities on bariatrics, so chairpersons needed. Is any, have you, you haven't talked to anybody who might be interested, do you, have you, Brian, or?
So we, at the last
Scott,
meeting,
did you raise your hand?
started,
I thought that
We're
little
hoping.
hand was up just a
I mean,
little.
No,
there's been a
my
conversation.
chin is firmly on it.
There's a conversation that sort of got mentioned at the last meeting and has been floating around about should we have a regional strategy on bariatrics? What does that even mean? Can we have one? We really are looking for someone to be the leader of that conversation, like Brian's leading the hover mat and slideshow conversation.
Maybe we could send out an email and have people think about it, and hopefully somebody will step up.
Big people one.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same
Or somebody
conversation.
who's on
Yeah,
your,
Just to,
who's
Yeah.
on your the
Yeah.
committee, that's why I asked you that.
I'm perfectly willing to be an active participant, but I have taken on some new responsibilities.
I have new people under my command that I can make do a lot of that work, so.
Delegation is always good.
Give promotions and then
It
give them
always
work.
works. There you go. Perfect, okay, good. Thanks. Okay. Any questions about that, or any discussion about the hover mats or the bathrooms?
No.
Thank you. All right, operational reports. No, Dr. Daly had to leave. Did he, Brian, or Dr. McHugh, did he?
So I'll just come by them both. There's no REMAC report because we got snowed out. Medical records report. Sorry, we got snowed out by the storm, so there's no medical director or MAC reports. Medical director reports commenting on drug shortages. Diltiazem is very short. Fentanyl is short, getting worse, and there's also a hint that ketamine may be coming shortage as well. Also, there is the 7507, which includes a section on approving community paramedicine, which is currently in committee. Hasn't made it to the floor, been voted on yet. Other than that, there's multiple regional initiatives for increasing Narcan availability. I think Albany County Sheriff's was doing something, and also Ellis Hospital will be joining Albany Med as a place we can get Narcan training and dispensed to you from the ED. So that's all I have.
Any questions for Dr. McHugh? Thank you. All right, treasurer's report. TJ?
In the interest of time, you do have the treasurer's report in front of you. We're still in very good financial shape. Took a beating in the stock market in January, like most everybody, and hopefully we'll make some of that up in February.
Thank you. Quality Improvement Committee report?
No report. They were to meet with the REMAC academic, which got canceled last month, but they'll be meeting first week of April.
Thank you, Tim. CON Committee? Jim?
No issues before the CON committee, just without saying, just because we're talking about committees and committee assignments, a vote of thanks or to the members of the CON committee. For those not aware, when we become active, it's as a result of an application that we receive, and unlike maybe some of the other committees that have a little bit more freedom, once that happens, we're defined by the public health law to take action with a certain predicted time frame, and that requires the committee members to often set aside their personal schedules and get here when it's less than convenient. And also, just a note of thanks to Tim that works tirelessly to try and get people not to do this at the 11th hour. And unfortunately, many times his advisories are not heeded, and we end up here in July doing stuff that we could have done in March. So, again, thanks to everybody that's on it.
Thank you, Jim. All right, so informational sharing, there were no Department of Health disciplinary actions. Under course applications, CFR original and refresher, sponsor RCARA, the location Houston Hill Fire Department starts 3/12/18. There was no correspondence. And the committee reports, what we'd like to propose with the new agenda is that the committee chairs would notify the executive director if they have a verbal report 1 week prior to the meeting. There's a lot of times where we don't have any report, rather than just going through it all the time. If people would do that, that would be good. If anyone has any committee report, I can start with, for this week, executive committee, any report? I mean, I'll do that in case someone does have a report, and then next week we can, or next month, I'm sorry, we can just go with the new agenda, if that's okay. Executive, anybody from Tim, have anything? No? Okay. Finance, PJ, anything on your end, or Steve?
The only thing from finance is just that, I think it was in Tim's report, which is the 990 will be, we got the extension so it can come back, for the finances to come back here. And we, as PJ said, you know, January we took a beating, now we'll see how fast we make it back.
Academic? Anyone have any report?
No meeting last month.
I would suggest that you could probably remove
It is.
academic from the list, just in general,
'Cause
just
we
because
don't
the
have it.
academic is a subcommittee of the MAC, and if the MAC is
Okay.
gonna report separately, in the interest of streamlining, you could probably remove that in general.
New York State EMS Council? It's usually,
The New York State EMS Council was scheduled to meet last month, but there was no quorum. We were one person short, and so that person was home with the flu. So as a result, there were no elections, so I remain chair until the May meeting, at which point then we'll have the elections to elect new officers, so, but no business was transacted at that meeting.
Any word in the executive or the,
There is no word on the decision on who the new director of the Bureau of EMS will be. There is also interviews taking place for a assistant director of the Division of EMS. So I did not know this, but while we had a number of key staff around her, nobody was officially designated the deputy director. They have now established a job description for a deputy director so they're hiring two people, the director and deputy director. If anybody hears anything, you know, tell everyone, because everybody's listening and nobody knows.
so any of the other committees, the nurses committee, we meet every other month, and I reported last month, so we'll report out again next month. MCI?
There's no report in that committee, however, I'd be glad to chair it again if you so wish.
Done. Thank you, PJ. And membership, Lynn,
No report.
for nominating awards, bylaws, I'll keep on going.
But if you quit
Okay.
nominating, I gave it up, and you were gonna appoint,
Maria?
Maria. I forgot that, I am so sorry, yes, done, Maria. Okay, perfect. There's two done, excellent. Okay, good. So Maria Walker will chair the nominating committee. Okay, awards
I just found out that
is
was me.
Brian. Yeah.
So I will start on that tomorrow.
I did email you right back, and I said, yeah, I did. I even checked my sent things to make sure that I did
You
before
emailed
the
me
meeting.
right back, you said,
I
yes, I didn't know that was like the.
Done.
Oh,
Because I checked on that right away, and I was told that the
Oh.
chair made the decision on that, so I said, I acted right on that.
then,
Yes.
in fairness, you did, so, okay, I guess I didn't know that.
The deadline for awards is
No
tomorrow.
report.
There you go. So Brian,
No report.
that's great. Touche. Bylaws, Lynn? Anything else
Oh,
other than
no.
what we've done? We beat that one to death. Okay, very good. And then county reports, again, we're asking the county reps, or encouraging them to submit a short report to the executive director 1 week prior to the meeting, and then we'll attach that to the director report. So I won't go through every county, but does anyone have anything they want to report in the interest of time?
well, I'm not from Greene County, but I'd like to applaud Greene County, and in particular Dave Bettini. Back at the end of January, Aiden and myself and Mike Daly and Greg Fox were all judges at the Greene County Boy Scout First Aid Competition that Dave Bettini has been doing for a number of years. And it was awesome to see these young men. I don't know how many of you know, I didn't know, guess I should have known, that Mike Daly is an Eagle Scout, and he spoke to the Eagle Scouts and the Eagle Scout wannabes that were there. What? Well, I should have known, I'm sorry. Yes, I know he was his Eagle Scout, okay. But it was quite the thing down there on a Saturday morning. We had a great time, don't you think, David?
It was wonderful.
What?
I'd like to, just say, I'll be leaving my position with the sheriffs as the kind of the commander of the EMS division. I'm being promoted to an inspector position where I will be in charge of the county's critical incident emergency management unit. Some of the jokes before, people obviously know. Dennis and Scott Bowman will now be the two new command staff of the sheriff's department. Additionally, one of the other big things that we have working is the new rollout on the fire EMS side of the 800 megahertz system. That may be something, PJ, that we sit down and discuss under the MCI committee because of the interoperability between Rensselaer County, Saratoga County, and Albany County under the 800, how that plays into our responses into Columbia County or Greene County or Schenectady County, which are not 800. And also some discussions that I had with Scott Haller and as a member of the HOP and how they want to try to integrate some 800 radio use into the hospital. So they have some good ideas. It's a matter of whether they'll commit to the equipment and stuff. But it's kind of a new thing that's going to be out there. So.
Are there still going to be any high band VHF frequencies, or are they all going away?
So obviously, they have to keep some high band for paging. So there will be a high band transmitters on all the 800 towers for paging, and they'll keep some of that out there. But anything that the county uses will be patched through it. So we can patch into some of the other places. So that's what we're using. But the limitations are the 800 system. So we could technically be patched into the Greene County EMS frequency if we have a radio, but it only works if we're within the 800 megahertz system. So if I go down to Catskill, likely I'm out of the system. So even though it's patched, I can't talk to you. I'd have to have it. Most, the county did ask all the agencies to keep their VHF stuff in their units. So I believe everybody did do that. So I think all our units still have the VHF capabilities to do that.
Congratulations, both of you.
Thank you.
Any other county reports? Okay. Under new business, or I'm sorry, under old business. Under new business, REMSCO members are requested to contact the executive director with any items for new business 1 week prior to the meeting.
The only thing I had listed under there is the scheduling of our annual audit report. They're ready to go when I give them notification, but I don't know if you folks want to think about that, you know, pending all the bylaws discussion, whether it's next month or the month after. Just let me know and I will convey that to them.
I would think April, wouldn't you? Yeah, April's good.
Okay, I'll let them know.
Any other new business? Old business?
Okay.
No professional.
There's a quick handout that just went around. This was requested to be done at the last meeting. We had some incongruity about just who's allowed, who should or should not be engaging outside services. So this is pretty straightforward. It just says that professional services need to be authorized by the executive director, chairperson, or a vote of the REMSCO. The council will be notified when they are engaged, and authority can be given to a committee chairperson, for example, the treasurer, on engaging the accountant. And this is just to make sure that everybody is on the same page when we engage outside assistance. So I don't know if we need to adopt this policy or if it just gets handed out as a policy of REMSCO. Certainly, if someone wants to make it a motion, we could make it a motion.
Since it's probably the Scott clause, I would make the motion that we accept this as a policy, and I think it should be made as a motion and seconded and
Okay.
approved by the council.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
I said, you get a clause, I get a clause.
You got a clause.
All right. Items from the floor, Steve?
I have two quick items from the floor. One is, I received an email today from Haney's, the Hospital Association. I'm just gonna read it real quick. The New York State Department of Health has recently announced that it's re-examining New York State stroke designation process. Haney's is collaborating with DOH and partner associations to hold forums with hospitals and emergency medical services in different regions across the state. The purpose of these forums is to introduce concepts under development and ensure changes are well informed by those who will be impacted. Please invite your EMS colleagues to a forum that will be held on March 21st from 10 a.m. to noon at Glens Falls Hospital to discuss I guess there's going to be a consideration of a new set of designations for stroke centers. So if anybody is interested in attending, let me know. I don't have a registration form, but there's a link in the email that I can send you to click on to register. And please, if you have someone in your agency that would be interested in this, that's in your quality area, pass it on that this is happening. The second, so.
Nothing about this, I had another old business thing I was waiting, I thought you were done.
Second item from the floor is that in the governor's budget, he did include enabling legislation that would allow community paramedicine to proceed. The New York State Nurses Association is going to fight this tooth and nail. If anybody as an agency that is interested in doing anything in the community paramedicine area, I would encourage you to send a letter to your senators and assembly members saying you support that provision in the governor's budget. I wrote a letter to our assembly folks already. I think I've shared it with a few people. If you're interested in sending one, I'd be glad to share my letter, and you can send a letter too, but it's gonna come down to budget. It's gotta be decided by April 1, so March is the month where things either stay on the table or fall off the table.
Steve, may I'm the past chair of our state association. We support this legislation. We've been working with the Home Care Association of New York State on this program. I'm also part of the Home Care Association Sepsis Program, the steering committee. As part of that, working as a steering committee, we have a lot of other inroads on community paramedicine. And right now that's getting a lot of traction in the Department of Aging, and all those kind of groups. So it has actually some wheels now moving. Again, this is a four-leg tiered system. One is making sure that it's statutorily available. That's changing public health law. Making sure training education is performed correctly. Making sure that it's financially viable. And the fourth thing is trying to find how do we convince our staff to participate in this program. So those are four things we're working on right now with the Home Care Association group. But the first thing right now is going through right now the budget process, making sure this is statutorily available. Because right now EMS can't do community paramedicine outside public health law.
Questions for Les? Any other items from the floor?
I was gonna originally take issue with the approval process for the Skidmore research thing, but then I subsequently found out or heard through the grapevine that maybe that had fallen apart. I was wondering if you had any information on that. I had heard that maybe that the people who were gonna run that decided not to do it anyway. Do we know anything? I know Dr. Daly has left,
They
but.
withdrew the application.
Sorry?
They withdrew the application.
They withdrew the application. So just for the record, I'd like to point out that, so Tim sent out, after the meeting last month, he sent out the document that was the pre-hospital care research fund that was approved by us, by this body, October 22nd of 2012, the process through which that should have gone. I guess I don't want to say necessarily that it didn't go through this process, but the process seems quite lengthy and involves a committee made up of the REMSCO chair, the REMSCO treasurer, executive director or QI coordinator, a physician leader, and an at-large member. And I never got the impression that that committee was formed, reviewed that whole thing, and I didn't get the impression that that proposal came to this body through that whole process. And so I just want to make sure that going forward that the whole body remembers this process that Tim sent out to us after that, and that any further proposals that come to us to have money spent is done the right way. That's all. So if that got withdrawn, it doesn't matter, but And we couldn't unring the bell anyway, but just going forward. And thank you, Tim, for sending that out.
Any other items from the floor?
I make a
Do you have a
motion
motion to
to
adjourn?
adjourn.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Officers, I need to see you, you need to sign the conflict of interest form.